What's going on, everyone? Hunter Dole, got Drew here with me. Philly Insider. It's been a while, guys. It has probably been since the trade deadline that we went live. I think that was our last stream was when we made that awesome deal for Tanner Banks right before the deadline happened. And we did get Seth Johnson and Moises Chasse. Hopefully I'm saying the names right on that stream. But a lot has happened since then. Not a lot of good things have happened since then, except for this weekend. And just want to get your thoughts on the team in general, Drew. I mean, it's been a long time since we talked.
Yeah, I mean, hasn't been a whole lot of good things happening on the Phillies side of things, but it seems like
No.
most of the guys that they either acquired or gave up, it seemed like the right move so far. I mean, Klassen and Aldegari have mightily struggled whenever they got into the Angels organization. So, yeah, I mean, maybe they just sold high on them, and that'll be the end of it. But yeah, I mean, Carlos Estevez, he's been mostly been good. Mostly, he's had a couple rough outings, but Tanner Banks, Tanner Banks, right?
Yeah, correct.
He's been pretty good. I mean, not perfect, but he's kind of like a middleman in the bullpen, so it's not like you need him taking down high leverage innings. But he's been getting lefties out, and he's been getting some righties out. So it's just, I mean, the trade deadline pickups have been playing good for the most part. Austin Hayes got hurt, so it's kind of hard to judge that right now. But before that, he was playing fine.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree. I mean, shocker, the Angels can't develop young pitchers, but what do I know? But you figured they probably weren't going to keep pitching that well at least the rest of the season, and it's early, so we'll see. I mean, give them a couple years, see what happens. But I said this in our group chat today. You replaced them with two guys who are already at the high minors level. Like we didn't have that was the big thing we talked about earlier in this year, Drew, was a lot of these guys were doing well in low A, and then they weren't translating, or high A too, and weren't translating to the upper minors. And now you have Seth Johnson, who's pitching well in AAA right now, already up with the Iron Pigs, I believe. And Moises Chasse gets 10 strikeouts in 4 2/3 of an inning the other day. So very exciting stuff there. I mean, obviously they're not perfect products. They're not polished just yet, but that's something to be excited about. Is you have two guys who are younger pitchers and high A or high minors pitchers right now who are both already making an impact, who could be on the team next year at some point and maybe eat some innings or maybe give you some quality starts. I don't know if Chasse will be quite ready by then, but Seth Johnson could certainly pitch for the big league team next year. I wouldn't be shocked at that. So that's exciting. And I don't think anyone really expected the Phillies to acquire minor league talent at the deadline. It was all about who was going to add to the major league team. So not only dealing away those two guys and getting a reliever in Estevez, who's been really solid so far. I think the one outing, he just got BABIP to death. Like, I mean, it was a lot of weak contact, but I'll talk about him in a second. But like, you get a solid reliever in him, and then you replace the two guys who traded for him. I mean, that's a success right there. So the deadline as a whole, again, Austin Hayes hasn't played much, so we're just going to kind of have to see. A little disappointing. He has struck out. Like, not a ton, but he struck out, I think, 11 times, and he's walked 0 times. So you'd like to see a little bit better of an approach, but at the end of the day, he's one of the better options out of the outfielders you have right now, especially going into September, October. I don't know. The outfield's been really bad, which we'll talk about too. But yeah, I mean, the deadline so far, I mean, looks like it's fine. But I am curious, seeing some of the other outfielders that got traded to other teams. Is there anything you probably would have done differently, or any other targets you may have had, or anything regarding the outfield acquisition? Because there weren't many guys available, but there's a couple guys who you probably could have picked up who maybe offensively would have given you a little bit more, but it's hard to say without Hayes playing much games so far.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you were going all bat and no fielding, you could do a guy like Jorge Soler. I mean, he's been good, but I mean, he got hurt, obviously, the last week. I don't think he's really played much for the Braves. Really hurt my fantasy team, but I mean, outside of like the big name, I guess we don't really have any big names that got moved, but there's only been a couple like quality outfielders that got moved this deadline, and I think they've all been relatively underwhelming. Like, I don't think anybody's really stood out that much. So I think the Phillies' best bet is just waiting on their current outfielders to start hitting more. And Castellanos has obviously done that. So that's been a massive boost. And obviously, Johan Rojas has been really good since the trade deadline, which has been very welcoming. I mean, if he gets on base 2 or 3 times in a 2-game stretch, that's a big W for you, because he's right in front of Kyle Schwarber. So It's pretty important.
Yeah, he's come around to score a number of times. Like Rojas has not been anything great. Like he hasn't been flashy, but I want to say he's been hitting around 260 since he got called back up, and he's scored a lot of runs in that span, especially recently. I feel like he's gotten on and he's come around to score, and that's the biggest thing. Like I know a lot of people complain about the bunting. Certainly something he really should know how to bunt with his style of play. I mean, it would help him so much if he could bunt. So that's a little frustrating, but what you've been getting out of Johan Rojas the past couple months, you're going to take that. I mean, again, he's your 9-hitter. He's out there primarily for his defense. And if he would have hit this way the whole season, he would have probably never been sent down. And honestly, I don't think I would have had too many complaints about him, because I also want to say, I can't say this in confidence. I would have to check numbers. I feel like he's not been striking out quite as much. I'm not going to say he's not striking out at like a high rate. It's probably still pretty high, but he's definitely seeing the ball better compared to where he was first in the year. Like a lot of his outs have been, he's still putting the ball in play, which you'll take that for a guy like him. You're seeing progress there. So he seems to be getting more comfortable. I'm very happy with what he's done. And like you said, we spent the whole first half of the year complaining about Castellanos, and he's really been the least of my complaints over the past couple of months. It's weird. I think probably the last time we were on here, I probably said it wasn't going to last. It probably wasn't sustainable, but you know what? He's been really solid, and I got to give Castellanos credit. There's been some times where the rest of the order isn't producing, and he's been one of the few constants, it feels like, over the past couple months. So those two guys, if it wasn't for them, the outfield would be horrific right now. And it's really it's still not that good.
Yeah. I mean, like Castellanos, he's batting right around Stott and Marsh. So it's been really hard for him to have guys on base around him. Like, even if he hits a double, it feels like he's going to get stranded because those guys are batting around him right now. And that's kind of something I wanted to talk about. I think you did as well, but Stott and Marsh got to be better. I mean, Stott had a good weekend, which is very encouraging, but I got to see it. I got to see it more. Like, you can't be hitting in the low 200s, and I don't care how good your defense is. It's like having another Johan Rojas. So we got to figure something out.
Yeah, and as far as the defense goes, too, you have Johan Rojas playing one of the most important positions on the diamond. Not that second base isn't important, but there's a lot more responsibility that comes with being a center fielder, so the defense is a little bit more helpful there, whereas if Stott isn't hitting, the defense is still very much welcomed at second base, and he's an excellent defender there. But it's a little more pressing for him to get going at the plate right now. And like you said, he had a good weekend. I feel like even some of the outs he made, like the one today, he hit to the wall. Garrett Hampson, he's a good center fielder. He made a nice play on it, but he just missed that one. Like, he put some good swings on the ball too. I think he's starting to see a little bit better. But it has been frustrating with both of them, because I think the thing you fall back on with the two of them this year, and Marsh walked last year, so like it's not like that's a new thing for him. Like, since he's come to Philadelphia, he has had a much better approach at the plate, and he knows how to walk. As far as Stott goes, the walks have been kind of new this year, but with that, for whatever reason, I guess, I don't know, maybe it's just the different approach of the plate, a little more patient. A lot more outs have been made for him, so it hasn't necessarily been as productive for him. He's still getting on a good bit, but not enough, because his bat's really not been doing much when he's putting the ball in play. And I'm not really sure what the solution is there, because I feel like sometimes he's aggressive and he swings at the first pitch and puts a good swing on the ball and gets out. And then other times I feel like, why are you watching two baseballs go right down the middle? So I don't know. I like what he did this weekend. I really hope that's something that can carry into this week, because they're going to need him. And you know what? He didn't have great numbers his rookie year, but he finished the year strong. And then he had a really productive October where he worked long at bats. He was competitive, and he fouled off the fastball, and he got the breaking ball a number of times, and he came through in a number of spots. So that's what I want to see from him. Is you're not going to get a guy he's not going to be the clutch guy in the playoffs, most likely. Not every single game, at least. He might have some clutch moments, but he's not the guy you're depending upon for those big spots. But I certainly think if he can put together competitive at-bats, he's a valuable postseason player. And that's what this next month is about, building towards that. So, and as far as Marsh goes, I'll talk on him and then let you go on him. It's just a lot of the times he's not even touching the baseball. And again, I think he had a couple better swings this weekend too, but it's frustrating. It's gotten really frustrating with him, because Brandon Marsh is a fan favorite. Love the guy. He's definitely embraced the city, but all that stuff is cool until you're not performing well and you're not winning, which we've seen over the past month. It's not pretty. So I'm not really sure what the solution is there either, because again, a lot of the times he's just flat out whiffing, and he strikes out at an insanely high rate. And if he could just cut that down a little bit, we'd be in a good spot. And if he has to cut down if cutting down the strikeout rate also means cutting down the walk rate a little bit, I can live with that because he walks at a really high rate. So you don't have to walk 12% of the time. Maybe give me 9% and put the ball in play a little bit more. So that's kind of what I have on them. But at least one of those guys is going to have to really step up, because if both of them are non-factors, then your bottom of the order is really, really weak.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, they're batting around, like, I think one of them's batting 6th and one of them's batting 5th, one of them's batting 7th, something like that. But those guys, like, they're in the middle of the lineup, one of them is. And if they're not producing, then you really feel it, because when the top 4 in the lineup are producing like they did this weekend, which Bohm had a bad weekend, but the top 3, they played pretty well. But when you have guys on base, it feels like everything's like the importance is doubled. I don't know why, but just like when somebody strikes out with the bases empty, it's like, whatever. But Marsh, he's been coming up in a lot of big spots, I feel like, and he's just not been coming through.
No, for sure. And like you said, those guys are going to have opportunities with runners on base. At least one of them is going to come up in some big spots, and the other one's kind of setting the table for the rest of the order to get something going too. So they're both going to be in important spots moving forward. And Bohm, I'm not really worried about. Like, he had a good day today. And like you said, like, it's not really a major concern because, again, not the best weekend for him, but and obviously the play in the first inning today was disaster. That can't happen. You got to know how many outs there are. But as far as his bat goes, I think he'll be there. And I've kind of grown in my confidence in him going into the playoffs too. And that's another thing. I keep talking about playoffs, but because of what's happened the past couple months, I mean, they're still very much in the lead in the NL and in the NL East, but you got to be careful. I mean, this team has got to take care of business the rest of the way. I think they will be there. I would be shocked if they didn't make the playoffs, but they're certainly not a lock for it right now. But I think they will be there. But that being said, those two guys, Stott and Marsh, at least one of them has got to step up in a big way, and it certainly is going to be interesting with how the outfield is deployed. Speaking of Marsh too, because again, Hayes has been more of a bottom of the lineup guy since he's been here. I think while I said he hasn't walked much, he has hit the ball hard. I definitely think he's hit the ball hard, and again, he's just coming back from injury, so we'll have like a better idea of what he is probably in a couple weeks, or what he can be for us down the stretch. But that's a guy who you may consider him playing every day if Brandon Marsh isn't going to turn it around. I don't know, but it's hard to know that right now. Brandon Marsh is coming off a good day today. We'll see how that continues as we go into this next month here. But I'm very curious to see how the outfield is deployed, because as of right now, again, Castellanos is going to play in right field regardless. That's just what's going to happen. And he's earned it right now too. So credit to him. Yeah. I don't know how confident I am in him in the playoffs, but it's another conversation. For right now, he's been one of our most consistent outfield bats and one of our most consistent bats over the last couple of months. And then I would probably have Rojas playing center field if I had to pick a starting lineup for the postseason right now.
Yeah, I mean, Rojas, it feels like his at-bats have been so competitive lately. Even against tough right-handers, he's been working full counts at the very least, it feels like. Obviously, he's still an unfinished product, so he's going to have some at-bats where he's going to be overpowered or overmatched or whatever it may be. But for the most part, it feels like he's been setting up the top of the order very, very well for the last month at least. And it's kind of a shame that Marsh has been playing as bad as he has, because he's usually the one batting pretty much right in front of him. So, yeah, I mean, it makes a big difference whenever you have two guys at the bottom of the lineup producing. And we only have one right now. So
Yep. I always think of that NLCS series against the Padres, because once you got through like the top 4 or 5 in that order, you weren't scared of the Trent Grishams of the world or the Austin Nolas. Like, it just wasn't a concern in your mind. Yep. And I always lauded our lineup for having the top 4 or 5 we did, but also how strong the bottom of the order was for a bottom of the order for any postseason team. And there's certainly been times this year where it's like, well, only the bottom of the order is producing right now, but those guys are going to be towards the bottom there. So if one of them can produce in the bottom of the order too, like, I don't need them to be a superstar. One of them is going to have to step up for sure. But if one of them can just be decent and just kind of steady, then that's going to make a big difference in the bottom of the order. Because like you said, Rojas has been a big factor there. And I also think, having JT, having him kind of inserted back in the middle of the lineup too would really be huge. Just consistently, obviously he's been better lately, and obviously wasn't playing today because day off for the day game. But just in general, obviously he's going to be in the middle of the lineup, but if you can just get that consistent performance from him, he led the team in RBI in the postseason last year. I mean, that's what you're expecting from him, is to be a big factor. So, because there are going to be times where maybe Bohm doesn't get the job done, and Realmuto is going to come up with guys on base too. Or maybe there's times where the top of the order doesn't step up and Bohm sets the table and Realmuto is going to have an opportunity, or Harper and Bohm are on. There's going to be plenty of scenarios that could play out like that. So, JT didn't play today, but his backup did play and had an incredible game, which we'll talk about. But JT, the last couple of days, encouraging to see what he's done, and I think he's starting to get back in a rhythm now too, which is huge.
Yeah, he didn't go out on a rehab assignment whenever he got hurt, I don't believe. So it's kind of just taking him some time, and I think with a guy like him, you just got to be patient, because you know what kind of player he is whenever he's got it all figured out, and he's been going good lately. So, I mean, I think yesterday he was talking post game. He's like kind of saying like, I've been feeling better lately, like my timing's back, and it's really shown. Obviously, I mean, he's been pretty outstanding the last few games. So
yeah,
if that can continue, that would be very good for the Phils, because, like you said, he hits right in the middle of the order. So it's just so important.
Yeah, 7 RBI yesterday. That was crazy. I mean,
yeah.
That is wild. And I think he ties the franchise record for most RBI in a game by a catcher. So, I'm excited for what JT has in store the rest of the year. Curious your thoughts on him not playing today. I know that was something that I was debating with Chris actually in the Discord. So I was okay with it because it's a day game and you have a full week of games. You don't get off until next Monday. But I understand it. You do want to keep him in a rhythm and keep that going. But I just think at 33 years old, playing a position like catcher and having a long season, I think it's really important to keep him fresh down the stretch, even on a day like this where it felt like you needed a win and you probably could have used him out there. But thankfully, the Phillies took care of business without him.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just never play your backup catcher. It's just not the way the world works. And luckily, Garrett Stubbs played really well today. But obviously, people were kind of like calling for Rob Thompson's job when he said he wasn't going to start JT today. But these guys plan that so far ahead of time. Like, JT knows, like, he probably knew on Wednesday that he wasn't going to play today.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, you can't really be mad at it, because if you watch any other team, there's a lot of times where their catcher has off multiple games in a series because they don't like playing their guys that much. And JT's kind of spoiled us in that sense. He has the most innings caught in baseball basically every single year, mainly because he stays healthy. But this year he's probably not gonna do that. But the last couple of years, he's led the catchers in innings caught by like a couple hundred innings. So it's been just ridiculous, and you can only do that for so long.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not an easy position to play. I like I told Chris, we were talking about it. Some of the other lineup decisions over the past couple months certainly been interesting, and there's certainly some that are up for debate too. And I know this was a big point of contention on Twitter today, so that's why I bring it up. Not just singling Chris out. We always have good conversations in the Discord, but it's like you said, JT plays more than a lot of other catchers in the game right now. There's not a ton of talent at the catcher position in the league. I mean, there's a lot of like good catchers, not a ton of great catchers. And there's really not a lot of decent catchers nowadays. Like it's a premium. Like you don't just find these guys on trees anymore. They don't just grow on trees, and they never really did, to be honest. Too, it's a hard position to find talent at because there's so much that comes with it, and it's so hard to sustain success as a catcher when you're so focused on the defensive aspect of the game too. And there's so many aspects within the defensive aspect of the game for a catcher too. So what JT brings to the table, I mean, you can never take that for granted, and sucks that he gets a day off right after the 7 RBI game. But like you said, Drew, it's something, whether he went 0 for 7 yesterday or 7 for 7, he probably wasn't going to play today. So, and I think it's for the best, because once you get to the playoffs, he's going to play every single game. And thankfully there will be some off days mixed in there, but this next week is going to be tough for him. I mean, he's probably going to play every game. Maybe he gets off for the 405 game on Wednesday, but I would hope he plays in that game. And it's tough. It's a hard position to play. It's a hard position to stay healthy out the whole year. And it's a hard position to catch that many innings at. So, yeah.
And he also had a knee injury earlier this year, so you kind of want to really be easy on him. I mean, it doesn't seem like they really have been, but I mean, he said like he'd rather be hurting at the beginning of the year and then get something done about it and then be healthy in October versus playing hurt the whole year and not playing as well, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I want to get to a few of these comments here before we move forward, and just thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate y'all. It's been a long time since we've been here, but Chris, welcome in. Good to see you in here. Weston Wilson, yeah, we got to talk about him too. First Philly to hit for the cycle since JT a year or two ago, I think it was. So that was really cool. We'll talk about that. And yeah, Stubbs goes from hitting 193 to 216 in the game. So that's something else. I mean, and he gets hit by a pitch and gets robbed of the opportunity to hit for the cycle today. Unreal. Royals were scared of it. Understand it. They didn't want to get cycled on, but it is what it is. Lil G, welcome in. Nerio, welcome in. Good to see you in here. Robert, good to see all you guys in here. Yeah, a lot of comments about the offense. I mean, incredible game today and yesterday. Just good to see them not just win a series, but do it in dominant fashion, especially after the first game. That was real frustrating. We'll talk about Taiwan too. But, yeah, we're mostly Phillies content here now, Martian. I mean, may do some Sixers postseason stuff, but yeah, we're mostly doing Phillies stuff from now on. So September is going to be a lot of Phillies coverage as we lead up to the playoffs. And then hopefully if we are lucky enough and the Phillies take care of business, we'll be going live pretty much all the time in October for the postseason, which is exciting. So we're ready for that. But yeah, we're ready to get hurt again too. And yeah, BCIB, best catcher in baseball. And Robert says, I've been critical of Stubbs, but maybe he can hit. He did today. I don't know how again, I don't think that you can expect that the next time out. He might go 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts the next time he's out there. But, you know, that's the thing is with a guy like Stubbs, he has those 1 to 2 games a year where I'm not going to say he's one of the better backup catchers in baseball, but for whatever reason, he just powers the team to a win or two. It's weird. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, most of the time he's just a chief vibes officer. Yeah. Other than that, most of the time you can't really expect too much out of him. But, you know, like you said, last year, I think, or maybe the year before, he had the Marlins walk-off home run, which, you know, literally that's a win in its own because I think they won like 4-1. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yep, they were down 1-0, I think, going into the last or something like that. It won the game. It was, I think they were down going into that at bat, and there was 2 outs possibly. It was crazy. It's like the last guy you'd expect to hit a home run in that spot. And honestly, like that was huge because that was 2 years ago, and only because of the Marlins beating the Brewers that year, ironically, did they collapse and the Phillies somehow snuck in. Not even sneak in. I mean, the Phillies kind of backed their way in. They walked backwards into the playoffs that year. But that Stubbs walk-off was a big reason. Like, those games matter. Those games matter at the end of that year. So, crazy. But and we're not real. I know for me, I've spoken very poorly of Stubbs a number of times this year, and I'm not going to act like I'm a defender of him. But hey, I mean, you can't be mad at what he did today, even as someone who's critical of him. So,
yep.
And then anyone missing Gregory Soto and Anthony Dominguez? No, not necessarily. I mean, look, the bullpen has not been great, but I'm not really missing those 2 guys. And all love for Anthony. I mean, no beef against him, but I think he started off well with the Orioles, but I think he's struggled a little bit since then, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he gave up 2 walk-off home runs in a row to the Mets in one series.
That's right. Oh, he gave up both of them. Wow.
Yeah.
Alvarez and who is the other one?
I'm not sure.
Winker, that's who it was.
Yeah.
Big celebration from him. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, the Mets are playing pretty well right now. I can't lie.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to catch us, but I could see them sneaking into a wild card spot.
And that's a team, like, they've kind of had some magic this year. It's just you never want to face a team with vibes on their side, as the Phillies have shown you the past couple of years. So
I mean, no, you don't.
Like, out of the wild card teams, you look at the Padres. They have pitching. They have 2 or 3 really good pitchers with Darvish back now. The D-backs have 2 really good pitchers. The Mets kind of just have like a very solid rotation. There's no pitcher in specific I'd be super scared of, but that's the thing is, I don't know. Sometimes these teams, man, they just find a way, and they find some magic. So I would also just I think we would beat the Mets in a playoff series. It's just I don't want to face them and then run into the possible risk of losing to them in a short series and hearing about it the rest of my life. So I just rather avoid them. Just mentally, that for me, that's how I feel. But as far as those 2 guys go, yeah, I mean, look, neither of them were going to pitch in super big spots in the postseason, and they have not pitched well in Baltimore. So not necessarily missing them.
Yeah. It's crazy that Gregory Soto requested a trade. That's crazy.
It is. And requested high leverage spots before the trade and failed in those spots. So
yeah. And he hasn't gotten any high leverage with the Orioles, and he still pitched like crap. So
yeah. It's amazing what being an all-star on a terrible team will do. It'll go to your head a little bit, I guess. But should have seen that coming. I mean, he put so many runners on base, but my thought was, well, he gets out of it. So that was when he was with the Tigers, but that didn't really happen as much with the Phillies. So not our problem anymore, though. Yeah.
Speaking of things that shouldn't be our problem anymore,
Yeah.
Taijuan Walker, get that guy out of my rotation. What are we doing? Like,
it's bad.
He has like a 6 ERA, man. Like, come on. Like, I don't even know what to say.
Insanely uncompetitive. Insanely uncompetitive.
90-mile-an-hour fastballs right down the chute. Like, can't throw a splitter, can't throw off speed. Like, what do you got? Like, I mean, I could go out there and throw just as good as he's been.
Yeah, seriously, man. At this point, it's been egregious, and I don't know. At this point, you just throw Colby Allard out there, and I know they're not going to do that because they're paying more money to Taijuan, but Taijuan's not going to pitch in the playoffs anyway. Like sometimes you just have to admit defeat and just just take your L on certain signings and moves. Like you just got to call it. And that's a good point. You can't spell Walker without ERA. Yeah, this guy catches a lot of strays throughout the year, but he also brought it upon himself with how last year ended too, and it's unfortunate. I really did think at the time, like I thought that was just going to be a solid contract. I know it was kind of between him and Jameson Taillon, and I definitely last year I actually was glad we had Walker over him, but now I'm kind of wishing we had Taillon instead. But with how Allard pitched today, look, I mean he gave up a number of hits, but you'll take what he gave you today. I mean, I don't think that's really something he's going to do every single game out there. Is five innings with 2 earned runs and 5 Ks today. He gave up the 2 home runs for a reason. I mean, in the future, you're probably going to see him give up some home runs with guys on base. It's probably just going to happen. But at the least, he has eaten some innings this year, and that's all that was expected. When we signed that guy, that was all that you were hoping for, was that he would just be starting pitching depth for this team, and he's done exactly his job. I mean, if he no matter what he does the rest of the year, if he comes into a big spot, all I'm going to say is he shouldn't have been in that spot. Like that's the reality of the situation. So what he's done for this team and what he did today, that's more than I was expecting him to do this year. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, at this point, I don't even see Taijuan Walker on the roster in a few weeks. So I guess we'll see. But, I mean, next year at the very least, Andrew Painter is going to be coming up. So he's definitely gone then. And they're probably okay with just eating that money at this point.
Yeah, I'd rather watch stuff, even if Painter's not ready. Like if he needs a little time in the minors, upper minors, I'd rather see Seth Johnson pitch at that point too. Like you don't want to rush any of those guys, but there's more. It's more beneficial for one of them to get some big league experience than it is for Taijuan Walker to continue to waste reps for this big league team. And I don't see how he's on this roster next year. I think that they are going to do exactly that, is just cut their losses and just call it. I don't see them keeping him on the roster next year, because it's one thing if he was pitching like he did last year, and last year wasn't good. But like if he pitches like he did last year and the velocity is low in the first couple innings and then he builds up to it, you can get through a regular season with that. Absolutely. Like he would get up to 93, 94, 95. And that was, you could very much live with that. And the splitter was actually a weapon last year too. Right now, it's not even close to that. So, I mean, he doesn't even look like he's going to get another contract in the big leagues. I'd be shocked if he even got a vet in for a team next year. I think he'll get a minor league deal for some team, and they'll see if they can kind of figure some things out. But I don't know. It just doesn't seem like he's ever going to really return to his form again. And unfortunately, we got stuck with it after we paid him too. So I don't know, man. Thankfully, he's the 5th guy and he's not pitching in the postseason, but it feels very wasted, because you would ideally like that 5th guy to at least be able to go to the bullpen in the postseason. And there's no way you would even use him. So he's wasting a roster spot at this point, essentially. I don't know. It just, I would prefer, I think they can keep him off the postseason roster without him going off the 40 man. I think, right? I think the changes need to get the postseason. So
yeah, I'm not sure.
He'll still be in the clubhouse, I would guess, but
I think so.
Because Derek Hall was still with the team when he wasn't on the postseason roster, all that type of stuff. But at this point, it's kind of like Weston Wilson last year, where Rodolfo, you knew he was not going to be on the roster by the time we got to the playoffs, even though he was just up there so they could keep that last minor league option available for him. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they'd actually do that. But at this point, I don't see any value in keeping him on the playoff roster if you're wasting a spot at that point, in my opinion. And they did last year. They wasted a spot. It's the Kyle Gibson role all over again. But Gibson he ate innings during those 2 seasons he was with the Phillies. So I don't know, man. It's infuriating.
And most of the time, Kyle Gibson was fine.
Seriously.
It's just embarrassing how bad Taijuan is at this point. You trot him out there every 5th day and it's like a scheduled loss. It's just really where we're at. You can't be giving up 5 or 6 runs every single time. It's unbearable. And
Yeah.
I mean, Rob Thompson immediately basically didn't commit to him making his next start, so that's always not a good sign.
No, it's not. And that's not something that's happened in the past either. It's always been he's going to be going back out there. Like, I'm not saying he like went out of his way to explicitly say he would make his next start or was asked that like in the past, but the fact that was asked and he did not commit to it, that tells you they're probably leaning in a certain direction on Taijuan's future with the Phillies, which finally, I mean, it took long enough, but I get it. You wanted to try and see if you could figure it out with how much you paid him and let it go on as long as you could, but feels like they should have cut their losses a little earlier at this point. I don't know. It's going to be interesting what happens there, but yeah, I mean, at least in like the national start last Sunday, it went 4 innings, 3 earned runs. I mean, again, he's given up a lot of hard contact. No surprise there, but at least in that one, I can say, well, it wouldn't have even mattered who was on the mound if you're not going to score any runs. I mean, they put up 4 that game. Regardless, then he goes out there on Friday, and it's like, okay, well, this is basically a scheduled loss with how he's pitching, which is most of the games he's out there. So, yeah, I mean, the fact that 4 innings, 3 earned runs is like a good start for him. That's where we're at. That is
I mean, I forget who I saw say this, but like, are we trying to win a World Series or are we trying to not hurt people's feelings? Like, come on, let's go. Like, we're trying to win baseball games. Like, I don't know. There's really just no excuse. Like, and I think he would probably tell you the same thing.
Yeah, seriously, man, seriously. So, anyway, I don't have any other comments on whatever that disaster class of a contract has amounted to. Look, like, I'm sure he's not a bad guy. I wish him the best for whatever is next or whatever's next with the Phillies. I don't know what the next step is, but baseball side of it, fan side of it, I think we've been over it, and now it's like, all right, this has gotten.
It's like boiling over.
Yes, it's very much boiling over. It's a great way to put it. So that's what I got on him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else you can really say. I mean, like, it's just it's terrible.
It's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing, actually. Like having to watch it every game and see that the team is essentially taken out of the game, and you can feel it too. Like you can just kind of feel it. It's kind of contagious throughout the team when he's on the mound, and I think they all like him, but it's just you can kind of feel like you feel like everything is unraveling as soon as the first hit is given up. So yeah, it's unfortunate Turnbull got hurt this year too, because I mean, would have been perfect opportunity for him, but yeah, it's really unfortunate. He was pitching well too. So
yeah, and that's kind of been his career story. Honestly, I don't think he's ever pitched a full season in a long time. So it's unfortunate. Obviously, he's a heck of a good pitcher whenever he's out there, but he just can't ever stay on the field, and it's a shame.
Yeah. Well, I want to turn it to Weston Wilson, like Chris was talking about too. Before we
talk about something positive.
Yeah, let's talk about something positive, Drew. And man, he's been really good since he came up. He was a feel-good story last year with the Lorenzo no-hitter, and he made his debut and hit that home run. And even last year, like, he didn't have many opportunities, but I want to say he walked like 5 times in 10 plate appearances. I sound like a broken record. I said that 1,000 times at this point, but I say that because I felt like there was kind of some optimism around him last year, and he was hitting really well in AAA. And then this year he was kind of up and down between the big leagues and AAA, and comes up here, gets his opportunity to kind of audition a couple weeks before the deadline, and man, he's taking it and run with it. I wish he was playing a little more consistently. It's tough to find ABs for him with everyone who's kind of rotating in those couple spots right now where he would play, but he's been really good every single time he's been out there. He's been really good. So that's what you need. You need guys off the bench who are going to help get you through the regular season. I don't know if he's really a postseason hitter, but he's definitely someone who's really helped this team along the way this year. And I don't know, maybe he is a postseason hitter. Maybe he comes through in a big moment. He feels like one of those underdog story, like weird playoff feel type of guys who has a big home run. I feel like he's going to have a pinch hit home run this October for whatever reason. I don't know, but he's been really good, man. He's been outside of third base disaster, which he probably shouldn't have been playing there, but like that was awful. But he's been really good at the plate. Yeah,
it's kind of strange though, because he played third base a lot in the minors.
The minors. Yeah, the most out of any position.
I don't know what's going on with that, but it's. Yeah, he's an absolute beast at the plate right now, though. So I think Rob's going to be trying to get him in there as much as he possibly can, no matter what it is. Like, I don't think he plays a ton of second base, but if he can do it, put him out there as much as he's been hitting. Like, it's pretty incredible. Obviously, with him hitting so well, if they want to give him more consistent at bats, like, you can always just platoon Marsh and Rojas in center. I mean, that's always an option for you. But he could always just play for Marsh and leave Rojas out there in center, and then pinch hit Marsh for Wilson or Rojas at the end of the game. Mm-hmm. It's really just all situational and whatever Rob wants to do.
Yeah. At the least, I think he will play against lefties in the playoffs. I do think that'll happen. And whether that's for Stott or for Marsh, I'm not sure, because I do think they'll probably want to put Hayes out there. But again, it depends on what Hayes does the next month and a half. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Weston Wilson, I mean, it's a good problem to have. A guy who's trying to carve out playing time for himself and who's forcing you to make some tough decisions. That's a really good problem to have. So it's not an ideal situation with the outfield, but having a guy like that who's pushing for at-bats and who's the hot hand, I would love to see him out there a little bit more. I mean, he's got a career 1,000 OPS in the big leagues. So you don't see that too often. So we'll take that. But It's been a really cool story for a guy like that who's 29 years old and trying to make a career for himself. Like, some guys are late bloomers. Maybe we found a diamond in the rough here just by picking him up and bringing him to spring training last year. I don't know. Like, there's some scout, I'm sure, in the scouting department who's loving what he's seeing from him right now, since he was the guy who identified him as an under the radar guy. I don't know. It'll be interesting, man. I'm very curious to see what that left field spot looks like moving forward, because I do think, again, I think Rojas and Castellanos are probably my center fielder and right fielder. Castellanos for sure, but that's what I think it looks like right now. And I think left field's going to be, what does it look like over the next month and a half? That's what it is to me right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who they prefer to play, Wilson or Hayes, but at this point right now, you got to ride the hot hand, I think. I mean, I think that's kind of the way Rob's been swaying. Like, he's been giving Wilson a ton of opportunities, and he's been mostly taking advantage of them. He's been having huge games. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. That's really all you can really say about it, because we don't know what they're thinking on the inside.
Right. No, absolutely. And I do want to talk. Martian asked if the Mets caught the Braves. No, the Mets lost today, and it's interesting. Definitely, the wild card picture is interesting right now. 6 games back, the Braves are of us in the East, and the Mets are 8.5 back. The Mets are now 2.5 back of the Braves, and honestly, that wild card picture has kind of cleaned itself up. Like, the Giants are now 5 back. They were just 3.5 the other day, but they're 5 back. The Cardinals are 5 back. The Cubs are 5.5, and the Reds are down to 7.5. So the Reds look pretty much done. It's really the Mets and the Braves for that last spot right now. And 2 division rivals, obviously. I think they're playing in September at some point. Could very well decide the division or the wild card spot when they play. But I don't know. The wild card picture is interesting, so just wanted to answer that question. The Mets are still 2.5 back now. I felt like they had gained a little more ground. I feel like they should be like a half game back with how they played in that Orioles series. But, the Braves are still a good baseball team. They lost today, but they're still finding ways to win games. And obviously, they beat us 2 out of 3, which screw Whit Merrifield, man. I just had to say that. That really aggravated me. I just figures he goes there and starts playing well. But I had to get that in before the end of the pod. Now, I mean, look, he's been in the league for a long time, and he figures it out over there. He just needed to change the scenery and a little more playing time. And Albies has been hurt most of the year. So, like, they're down a number of guys, so he's going to play more often. It makes sense. But anyway, that was a frustrating series before this one, though. But just wanted to answer that question. If you got anything to say on that, feel free. I was just going to switch the topic. So,
yeah, I mean, like, the Mets, they gave up 3 runs in an inning and 2/3 today at the end of the game to lose it. So that was cool. Edwin Diaz masterclass, But yeah, the Mets actually caught Jackson Merrill stealing to, like, end an inning, like, in a big spot, and then he hit the walk-off homer. So that was
wow.
That was cool.
Big redemption run for him. Gotta love that.
Yeah, definitely. Man. But yeah, I mean, there's really not much to talk about as far as the division race goes, unless it would get close at some point. Which, the way, like, it seems like when we lose, the Braves lose, which is kind of ideal for us at this point.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
we had a pretty bad week, like, overall. I mean, we won this series, but like, we're 1 game less ahead than we were at the beginning of the week, and we played pretty bad. So it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add on that. I did want to talk about the pitching a little bit and get your thoughts there. Ranger Suarez return was really good yesterday. I mean, obviously only went 5 innings, but first game back. And I honestly think that IL stint was probably, again, back injuries you don't want to mess with. But just in general, I mean, I think he needed some time off too. He was really struggling a little bit through the middle of that season there. Really good to see him come back. And yeah, I'm just curious how you kind of feel about the pitching in general. With, like, the rotation, I never really waver on. I'm not really ever super concerned about them. The bullpen, I do have some concerns about. I think it's just kind of matchup based. I just don't know what to expect. I think Estevez, I trust him in certain spots for sure. I'm not sure if I want him being the guy in the 9th inning. I I'm more of like, I think you kind of play it by matchup in the ninth and see where it goes. But it seems like they kind of want him to be the guy closing that game. So I don't know. I'm curious to see kind of how he's used over the next month and then when the playoffs hit. So I'm not really sure what to expect there. But yeah, I mean, the bullpen's just there's some guys who I trust. There's some guys who I don't quite trust. I don't know. It's kind of been up and down for me lately. But that's how it is too.
Yeah, I mean, like the only guy that I really don't trust at all right now is Jose, and I think he had a good inning today for the most part.
Yeah.
So that was nice. But I mean, Strom, Hoffman, and Estevez, I trust pretty well. I mean, I think you know what you're getting out of them most nights, and I think I feel pretty good about it. Tanner Banks is pretty good so far, and obviously, like you said, the rotation in the playoffs, there's really just no other rotation that's going to touch ours other than maybe Seattle's. So, yeah, the Dodgers are so banged up; they're kind of like I don't even know, like an afterthought as far as their starting pitching goes. But obviously, they're going to be getting some guys back next year, and they're going to be really good. We have Ohtani again. So, yeah. I mean, the Phillies pitching is pretty good. I think they're in a pretty good spot, and obviously, the guys that have been struggling in the bullpen, I think are going to turn it around. Like Jose has been struggling a little bit, and Strom had a little bit of a rough patch, but he kind of got out of that. I think he's been pretty good lately. So, I think overall, though, they're pretty good.
Yeah, I feel good, very good about Strom. I mean, again, you figured he was due for some regression at some point. He's having an all-world year for what we expect. Like we expect him to be good, but he's having a super successful season. And Strom's not someone who I'm super concerned about. I was even last year. I wasn't super concerned about him because I just felt like he was going to come through in big spots with the way he was pitching down the stretch. And he had a tough. I mean, again, last year was tough for him. People forget he was a starter at the start of last year, which wasn't supposed to be his role. He did a lot last year. So this year, I think being on like a more normal schedule has been huge for him. And again, like you said, he kind of got through that rough patch. I think Kerkering, he had a little bit of a rough patch there a couple weeks ago, but I'm not super concerned about him. I feel like he's going to be better this postseason. That's a big thing is you had Kimbrel in some of those spots last year, which you're now going to have Estevez in those spots. But last year you had Kerkering in some big spots when he just was not he was just not quite ready for the NLCS, I don't think. And again, it was a guy who had started the year in single A. That's just a tough task. It's a tall task for a guy like that to come up and pitch in a big moment in the NLCS. And I think the big thing was he just didn't throw strikes. I mean, he walked in a run. You got to throw strikes. He's got to trust his fastball. I think he's done that a little more this year for sure. There's times where I think he could do it better, but he had a little bit of a rough patch, like I said, earlier this month, but I think he's been better lately too. And I think he's going to be really good in the postseason. He's going to be a key piece to rely upon. And Hoffman, I never worry about him. Hoffman's the guy. I mean, that is the guy. Like, if the biggest moment is the seventh inning or the sixth inning, like that this year, that's the guy you want in that spot. So, and Alvarado, again, like it was, good. He got the mound thing figured out today. I feel like he always has an issue with the mound. I don't know. He's very, very particular about it. So I respect it though. But again, he hasn't had the best regular season. He's just going to have to pitch in some big spots in the playoffs. And so I just hope the way this back end of this season goes, or at least continues to go, I just hope he figures it out, because it's definitely felt like more of old Alvarado, where every outing is kind of just
a roller coaster.
Yeah, you just hold your breath and cross your fingers, man. So I don't know. We'll see what happens there. I'm definitely hopeful for him. Like cautious optimism, I think is the right word, because I think he still has what it takes to get it done in those spots. But I don't know. I'm definitely not like as confident as I was in him last year. Definitely not. But and then Tanner Banks, I mean, I feel good about him. Like lefty on lefty spot, he's very, very much reliable. And like you said, he's gotten some righties out too. I feel like I think he's had one bad outing since he came to Philadelphia, if I'm not mistaken. I want to say that's what it's been.
Yeah, I think he might have gave up like a 2-run homer, gave up a couple runs at one point. But I mean, overall though, pretty solid. A lot better than Gregory Soto.
Seriously, yeah. And I am seeing he's had a couple wraparounds or times where he's had to get an out where he's given up a run. So he certainly hasn't been perfect, but overall, I mean, again, in his role, he's going to be fine. And Gregory Soto, I think the thing was there was hope of so much more with him there, where he could be one of those high leverage guys, and he never really amounted to that in Philadelphia. But I also think at the same time, like you look at a guy like Tanner Banks, and he is going to probably get some higher leverage spots, but they're gonna do it matchup based and get him lefty on lefty, and I think it's going to work out. So the bullpen, I'm honestly like, I am somewhat concerned about just because it's been very up and down. But I also think the potential for them to come through in those spots is absolutely there. Like they have the guys. I don't think maybe they could have added another guy at the deadline. Sure, you always could. You could always use an extra reliever. But maybe you could have picked up Hector Neris. I don't know. I don't think he's not going to pitch in big spots. So of course he'll go to Houston and figure it out too, which figures. But that's a guy he cannot pitch the ninth inning. Pitch everywhere else, but not the ninth. But he's also his whip's like 1.5 this year. So his ERA looks fine, but he puts a ton of runners on, which that was Gregory Soto. Like you don't want to run into that problem in the postseason. So I don't know. I feel overall like I think the bullpen will figure it out. I think they're starting to figure it out too. Like you said, a couple of guys are coming out of the rough patches right now, and I think they're going to be better down the stretch. And I do think that the rotation will be fine. Again, I don't really have many concerns with them long term. So they're all going to have bad outings from time to time. They were due for regression, but the rotation has 4 guys who can go toe to toe with anyone in the postseason, in my opinion.
No doubt. Yep. I mean, the Phillies have one of the deepest pitching staffs just generally. So it's definitely a luxury that we all have that we probably don't even really realize at this point, because there's a lot of teams where they have 1-2 guys in the bullpen that they really trust. And then they have a lot of guys that are kind of like in the position where like Sir Anthony Dominguez was, where it's like sometimes he's going to blow up and sometimes he's going to be really good. So I think we're just spoiled. Obviously, like Jose Ruiz is not anything crazy, but he's been more than solid for the last month. So
for sure,
it's fine what we have now, I think.
Yeah, especially Ruiz, he's another guy. He's kind of just there to help get you through the regular season too. And as far as Lazar goes, so Lazar got sent down for Allard today. I don't know if he'll be back up when Allard gets sent back, or if Allard gets sent back down. I'm not sure what the plan is there, but he looked fine. I didn't watch him too much, to be quite honest. He pitched in some low leverage spots, so admittedly wasn't watching some of those games. I don't think Drew was either. It was there were some games where it was like it's hard to watch the rest of this. So, but yeah, I mean, he looked fine. I don't know if he necessarily has the stuff to be like a big postseason pitcher. Or like I don't know. Maybe next year he makes more of an impact. But yeah, he was. I mean, he did everything he was supposed to do when he was up here. So I don't really have any complaints about him. I don't have like a ton of high praise for him, but he was fine.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's really not much to say. We only saw him a couple times, I think. So
it's very limited.
Yeah, it's going to be what it's going to be for now. I mean, obviously, we'll probably get an extended look at him in spring training next year at the very least, or maybe later in the season when the rosters open up a little.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I don't have anything else to really say on that or on the roster as a whole. I think it's just this next week is definitely going to be challenging. You have 3 against the Astros, 4 against the Braves. Those 4 against the Braves are massive. I mean, if you split, totally fine with that. That's a win in my opinion. But you lose 3 or 4 to the Braves, it gets a little bit interesting. That can't happen. That really that is not. It's not an option. It's not an option on the table. So, and the Astros will just kind of be like that's a good litmus test for this team. I think like just kind of see how they match up against one of the league's best teams. And I certainly wouldn't want to see the Astros if I was an AL team going into the playoffs. It's just you never do. You never want to see them. There's a reason they're so dominant year in and year out, and why people weren't concerned when they had a rough start to the season this year. No one was concerned. So that being said, I mean, it's going to be a fun week ahead. Hopefully it's fun to think about the possibilities of this week ahead, but if they could gain some ground on the Braves and lengthen that lead, that would be awesome going into this next month.
Definitely. I mean, it's going to be interesting because Taiwan's spot in the rotation comes up in that series. So it'll be definitely curious to see what happens. I mean, that's a guaranteed loss. That's a guaranteed loss if Taiwan pitches that game. I'm just saying. So you got to win the other 3.
You didn't have to say that.
Sorry to put everybody down a little, but you got to face the facts at some point.
Yeah.
Oh man. I mean, hopefully they figure something out. I don't really know what, but it's got to be something other than Taiwan Walker.
Yeah, you would hope so. And I don't know, Griff McGarry, maybe. Yeah, Mariano Rivera started out as a starter, so I don't know. That'll be a fun topic of conversation next year if he has some success. So I don't know. I that's really all I have, Drew. I didn't have anything else to really bring up. I feel like we touched on a lot of the major points of the team right now, and I don't know, anything else you wanted to bring up or talk about?
No, I mean, I think we covered most of the things. I mean, just got to keep plugging along and hopefully extend this lead on the Braves this week a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. I know it's been a while since we went live, but again, just
August was a busy month, but we know the end of the season is coming up. September is going to be the home stretch here before we go into the playoffs. So we're definitely going to be covering the team a little bit more. Trade deadline was busy, so probably a much needed break. Just see how things panned out too. I think it kind of worked out well. Just that we had a little bit of a hiatus here, but yeah, we won't be doing that long of a hiatus, especially now with a lot of big baseball games coming up. So and hopefully we get to cover some clinching scenarios coming up in a couple weeks. That would be fun. But anything you want to say before we sign off, Drew?
No, I mean, I think we covered pretty much everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate y'all. God bless y'all. We'll see you on the next one, and go Phils. Peace.